Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to, I can't believe I'm going to say this, the final episode of Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. I'm your host, Matt Volz, a senior here at Fredonia. After 4 years and 8 semesters, as this show started in October of 2022, today, over the course of the next hour, Big Blue Sports does come to an end, but it's not going to be all sad. We'll look back on a lot of my personal favorite sports memories from college, whether that be favorite Fredonia sports memories or favorite Buffalo sports memories. In fact, later on in the show, I've prepared, I usually do, just as a little bit of a lead in here, in the last episode of every semester, I do a top 10 countdown of my favorite sports moments from the semester. And I've done over the last 3 years. At the end of the year, my last show in the beginning of May, I count down my top 10 favorite sports moments of the previous year, of the previous calendar year, or academic year, I should say. With this being the last episode of the show, I felt that it only made sense to count down my top 10 favorite sports moments of my 4 years here at Fredonia. But I kind of felt like it was tough to differentiate. I always kind of battle back and forth between whether I want to highlight Fredonia sports moments or whether I want to highlight Buffalo sports moments. And for this one and a couple times in the past, I've decided that I want to highlight both. So I have 2 separate countdowns, both of which I will be sharing later on in the show. I have my top 5 Fredonia sports moments of my 4 years here at Fredonia and my top 10 Buffalo pro sports moments of my 4 years here at Fredonia. Those coming up later on in the show. Of course, I've got a lot of people to thank, a lot of goodbyes to say on a very bittersweet last episode of Big Blue Sports. It has been an unbelievable ride, but we've still got a show to do today, so let's jump to it. Fredonia sports, of course, as has always been the case, starting off our conversation, and we've got some playoffs to talk about. Fredonia softball, pretty much as we speak right now, is getting ready to play their opening round SUNY playoff game. First pitch was slated for noon today. The Blue Devils are up at Oneonta up at New Paltz, I should say, taking on Oneonta. Again, this is a bit of so the first 2 games of this, Fredonia finished as the number 4 seed. So they'll face 5th seed Oneonta, 3 seed Buff State taking on 6 seed Oswego. Again, the plan is for the Blue Devils to start at noon. And that game close to getting underway. It has not officially started just yet. But I will provide updates as I can on that softball game. Again, a gorgeous day in New Paltz, I should add. The Blue Devils taking on New Paltz today. These first couple of games are single elimination. If Fredonia wins, they will play the host New Paltz later today. And I should say, if Fredonia wins this game, they do go into the round-robin tournament that'll be tomorrow and Saturday. This is the only single elimination game that Fredonia will play in the SUNY tournament. The SUNY tournament for softball operates a little bit differently than some of the other sports do. But yes, Blue Devils and Oneonta should be starting probably pretty shortly. I actually just took a look at the live stream. Looks like they're just finishing off some landscaping on the field and then probably getting ready to go here in the next few minutes, I would assume. So that obviously very exciting to watch. Softball had a tough stretch down in Florida, but again, as I've talked about a few times on the show, they typically schedule teams that are very, very good in Division III. So the overall record doesn't necessarily jump off the page. They were 17-21 in the games they played this season. Their conference record is what got them to the 4 seed in the SUNYAC. They went 11-7 in conference play, and they were very good on home field. 10-4 at home this season. Away and at neutral sites, again, some of this influenced by the great teams that they played down in Florida, but 4-8 away from home and 3-9 in neutral site games. So we will see. Fredonia is, technically speaking, the home team for this game against Oneonta, although it is at a neutral site at New Paltz. So, and Fredonia definitely had a further trip to make than Oneonta did, but the Blue Devils finishing in 4th. The reason this tournament is at New Paltz is because New Paltz finishes the number 1 seed. That's the way the SUNYAC playoffs operate. The 1 seed sort of hosts the entire tournament. And again, today, the single elimination games, Buff State and Oswego played this morning. Do not have a final score from that one yet that I can see. And then Fredonia and Oneonta playing shortly, should be probably within the next few minutes. Moving on to outdoor men's and women's track and field, the NCAA All-Atlantic Regional Championships taking place this weekend at Baldwin-Wallace University in Berea, Ohio. They'll start tomorrow and run through Saturday. A few Blue Devils have qualified for it. Cam Sample in the long jump, Cara Pelleccia in the pole vault, as well as others qualifying for the regional championships. And they were in the regional championships for indoor track too. Lockett and Pelleccia, as well as a few others, were. So with head coach Tom Wilson in, I don't think I know the exact number. I believe it is Coach Wilson's 18th or possibly 19th season coaching cross country and track and field for Fredonia. And he's built a very successful program, and it's a program that is really, it was pretty solid when I got here, and it's only gotten better in the 4 years that I've gotten here. Of course, we know the new outdoor track and field facility opened. They were able to host the Blue Devil Invitational there a couple of weeks ago. Phenomenal track, phenomenal facility, and there's a lot of promise. Even though, again, some of the stars of the team, like Cara Pelleccia in the women's pole vault, of course, men's jumper Cam Sample, both of them seniors, but there's a lot of other young, very exciting talent. Jacob Futch, a young men's pole vaulter. Yvonne Little, a freshman jumper for the women. She was fantastic this season. So there's a lot of promise for Coach Wilson's team, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with in the SUNYAC. The women's team actually placed third at the SUNYAC Championships last weekend. And I should mention for the men's team, Stephen Hallberg took home the win in the 5K, so he's also going to be out in Berea competing in that event for the All-Atlantic Regional Championships. And the top finishers from the Atlantic Championships this weekend will move on to the NCAA Division III Outdoor National Championships, which will be hosted at the University of Mount Union, also in Ohio, and that'll start on Thursday, May 14th. Interestingly enough, Mount Union, actually the alma mater of Philadelphia Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni. One of the coolest experiences that I had in my Fredonia career was being able to actually speak with Nick Sirianni's college coach at Mount Union, as well as Nick Sirianni's brother, Jay, who was a teacher and a coach at where Nick went to high school at Southwestern High School down in Jamestown, about 45 minutes south of Fredonia. I've written an article for the Leader my freshman year when the Eagles played the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 57, when they played the first of the two times that they played. And the Chiefs ended up winning that game, but I wrote an article about Nick Sirianni's local connection to Western New York and specifically Chautauqua County. And it was really cool. It was one of the coolest articles I've ever gotten a chance to write. And I'll never forget, and I'll share a very, very brief story before I move on to our last part of Fredonia Sports Update. When I was finishing up that article, it was a struggle to get a hold of Jay. So I had talked to Larry Karras, who is a legendary D2 football coach, was Nick Sirianni's coach in college. So I had talked to Larry Karras. I had talked to Jake Burkholder, who's the the Southwestern football coach now. And that was kind of going to be it. And the article was due at noon. So at about 11:40, my phone rings. And I take a look at it, and it's Jay Sirianni giving me a call. I said, I have to take this. So I interviewed Jay Sirianni. The conversation was about 10, 11 minutes or so. And in a race against the clock, I don't know why I didn't ask for an extension. I was a freshman, and I wanted to impress my boss as the leader. So I raced against the clock to get the article done, and I got it in right at noon. So that's one of my favorite leader stories. Of course, I have had the great fortune to serve on the Leaders Executive Board for the last 3 years. I was, 3.5, kind of. I was the assistant sports editor spring semester freshman year. I served as the sports editor in my sophomore and junior years before making the jump to editor-in-chief this year, which has been a dream come true and absolutely unbelievable. I'll talk more about my journey through the Leader and Fredonia radio systems a little bit later on. To cap off Fredonia sports, even though the women's lacrosse season has come to an end, 5 Blue Devils were named to the various all-SUNYAC teams. 3 players were named to the all-conference second team. Sophomore attacker Miley Barron, freshman midfielder Katie O'Brien, and senior defender Cameron Jacobs were all named to the all-SUNYAC second team. Very well deserved for all 3. Katie O'Brien I truly believe, is going to be, at some point in her college career, she's going to lead the conference in goal scoring. I really believe that. She scored 42 goals as a freshman. That put her in the top 10 of all freshmen in the SUNYAC. She's an incredible scorer. And with the amount of goals that she scores, I'm honestly surprised that she plays midfield. You have to wonder if maybe with her goal-scoring prowess, head coach Tori Poffenberger might at some point move her up to attack, but she's also very valuable at the midfield position. Another attacker who has been phenomenal for the Blue Devils is sophomore Miley Barron, another one of the conference's top goal scorers. Miley Barron was actually in the top 5 in the SUNYAC in assists this season, and she's only a sophomore. So for both Barron and O'Brien, they've got 2 more years together. O'Brien's got 3 more years, a lot of time to really make Fredonia lacrosse shine, and they're going to be a threat in the SUNYAC. They are going to be a huge, huge threat. Other than those 3, 2 Blue Devils were named to the all-SUNYAC third team. Freshman defender Shalia Helmick and senior goaltender Jessica Kowalski were both named to the all-SUNYAC third team. Kowalski actually had the 4th best save percentage of any goalie in the SUNYAC, while Shalia Helmick picked up 28 ground balls. That put her second on the team behind only Cameron Jacobs. So some phenomenal players, and again, some young talent, even though, Cameron Jacobs, Jessica Kowalski, and a few others will be graduating, and they've lost some very talented players over the last few years. Other players like Katie O'Brien, Miley Barron, Shalia Helmick, as well as several others are all going to be back next year and the year after, and in O'Brien and Helmick's case, even the year after that. So there's a lot of promise for Coach Tori Poffenberger's team, and I've mentioned it a few times that Coach Poffenberger and I actually arrived at Fredonia at the same time. We both got here. We both got here in the summer/fall of 2022, and it's been incredible to see her rebuild the lacrosse program. She's one of my favorite coaches to talk to here on this campus, and I'm really excited to see where her program goes moving forward. That is all for your Fredonia Sports Update. When I come back, we're going to talk about the Sabres. Buffalo out to a 1-0 series lead over the Montreal Canadiens in round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs after a 4-2 win last night. The Sabres just 3 wins away from the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2007. And I know we'd be looking ahead to say this, but 7 more wins for the Buffalo Sabres. Did I do that math right? I did not. Never mind. Hold up. 7 wins away from the Sabres' first Stanley Cup final appearance since 1999, and 11 wins away from the franchise's first ever Stanley Cup. But we got to focus on ending this series, taking down Montreal, and going to the conference finals. Thanks for tuning in to the grand finale of Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Back in a few. And welcome back to the grand finale of Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Before we jump into Sabres playoff talk, as we get closer to finals week, things can get very, very stressful. So tomorrow, stop by Rockefeller Arts Center, I should say, room 272 from 2 to 3 p.m. tomorrow as Fredonia Radio Systems and High Noon Friday present an event to heal your semester's stress with music. Join High Noon Friday for some relaxation with Jonathan Lambert, a practitioner in kirtan, I hope I pronounced that correctly, a method of healing through music in yoga. Make sure to bring something comfortable to sit on and a willingness to try something new. Again, that in Rockefeller or RAC 272 tomorrow from 2 to 3 p.m. presented by High Noon Friday. That's going to be a lot of fun. What else has been a lot of fun? The run that the Buffalo Sabres have been on. There's something a little bit funny about my last few episodes of Big Blue Sports being all about how the Sabres are doing so great and they're in the playoffs and I legitimately think they could win the Stanley Cup. Because for the first 3 years of this show, covering the Sabres was a nightmare. I mean, it was a nightmare. So I used to do the show on Wednesday afternoons. And the Sabres play, in the regular season, Sabres play a lot of Tuesday night games. And it always seemed like the Sabres were toying with me because every single week the Sabres they'd play a game on like Saturday night or Sunday afternoon and they'd win. And I'd be really excited to talk about it on Big Blue on Wednesday afternoon. And then they'd play a Tuesday night game and they'd be at home against like the Coyotes or somebody terrible. And they'd completely lay an egg, lose like 5-1, and I'd have to come on air and talk about it the next day. And it was so disappointing. There were so many times where I got so caught up in ranting about how frustrated I was at the Sabres that I would start to run out of time for the rest of the show. There were times where it would be like during Bills season, and I would have to make my picks for the week and give my analysis for the Bills in like the last 3 minutes of the show because I spent 25 minutes talking about how the Sabres defense was garbage. Yeah, so things are a lot different now than they've been the last 3 years. The Sabres are not only in the second round of the playoffs, but they have jumped out to a 1-0 series lead. Last night, game 1 of the series between the Sabres and Montreal Canadiens. For the record, I will say I am thrilled that the Sabres are playing Montreal. And that's not to say that I'm saying that because, I don't think Montreal's good or whatever. No, Montreal's good. They're here for a reason. The reason I love that we're playing Montreal is that in the first round, playing against Boston, it brought back so much of that old Adams division passion and that rivalry that has been gone for years. I mean, the Adams division hasn't been a thing. What was it? I think the 92-93 season was the last year of the Adams division. And it was always Buffalo, Boston, Montreal, Quebec, and Hartford were always going at it. And then you had the Adams division went away. And, we switched to like the regional conferences and divisions. Then the Quebec Nordiques moved to Colorado, become the Avalanche. They're not a rival of the Sabres in any stretch anymore. The Hartford Whalers moved down to Carolina, become the Hurricanes. They're not in Buffalo's division anymore. Boston and Montreal still are and have been, but it's been different. The late 90s specifically, it was like Buffalo was a lot better than both of those teams in the late 90s. And they beat both of them in the playoffs. They swept Montreal in the second round in 98. They beat Boston in the second round in 99. And as it got to the early 2000s, they were all kind of terrible in their own special way. mid-2000s, when the Sabres had some really great years, Boston and Montreal weren't really great. They weren't necessarily bad, but they weren't really great. Then you get to the late, 2010s. The Sabres play the Bruins in the first round in 2010. They lose. And then as the early 2010s, late 2000s and early 2010s, that's when the Boston versus Montreal rivalry started to really heat up. But Buffalo was kind of left in the dark. Buffalo fell into, obviously, this decade and a half of despair and frustration that we've had, and there hasn't been much of a rivalry between those teams. So to see the old Adams Division rivalry be refueled against Boston in the first round, it was so much fun. And now we get to do it for the second round in a row, playing against Montreal. If we had played Tampa Bay, yes, it would have been a phenomenal series between us and the Lightning. But there's something that is really, really fun about reigniting those old rivalries that have kind of laid dormant for the last, 30, 35 years. The Sabres used to play one or both of Boston or Montreal in the playoffs like every single year because it was the old Adams division. There were only 5 teams in the division, and they would always go up against one of them, or some years they go up against both of them, although usually it was only one of them because the Sabres really struggled to get past the first round back then. And now the Sabres are past the first round, obviously having beaten Boston in 6 games. But game 1 last night at home against the Montreal Canadiens, Buffalo got on the board early, and they were, I would say, dominant in that first period. They were fantastic. Zach Benson, as the Sabres broke out with a 2-on-1, Zach Benson, who had an unbelievable game last night. Benson fed a pass across to Josh Doan for the goal. Doan's second goal of the playoffs. Buffalo's up 1-0 just 4.5 minutes into the game. They've now scored first in, I believe, 5 straight games, which is crazy because they did not score a single first period goal through the first 3 games of the first round series against Boston. And then games 4 through 6, they said, I think Buffalo outscored Boston like 7-0 in the first periods of games 4 through 6. And they jumped out first in game 1 against Montreal as well. For that specific reason, I am wearing my new shirt that I just got from Store 716 in Depew last week. It is a red and black shirt. It says, "Don't Stop Believin'." I love this shirt. I'm also wearing my Bills hat because I looked back at my Snapchat memories and I realized I was wearing this same Bills hat on October 12th, 2022, when I hosted the very first episode of Big Blue Sports. So I figured I have to wear the Bills hat one last time again, even though the Sabres are on a warpath right now and the Bills are out of season. So the Sabres, another big struggle for Buffalo so far in these playoffs has been their power play. Buffalo's power play was 1 for 46 through the 6 games of the Boston series, the worst of any team in the first round. Now, fortunately for Buffalo, power play struggles were a very common theme across the board in the first round. Aside from, I want to say, Carolina and maybe Dallas, I think those were the only 2 power plays that were at or above 20%. So everybody's power play struggled in the first round of the playoffs, but the Sabres struggled more than anyone else. Now, technically speaking, they only officially had 1 power play goal in the first round against Boston. They basically had 2 because Josh Doan's first goal of the playoffs was as Boston's penalty was expiring. It was like 1 second after the penalty had expired. It was still 5-on-4 in the offensive zone. So that was basically a power play goal, but it didn't officially count. The Sabres, again, this group of, we talked about the line in the first round of Zach Benson, Noah Ostlund, and Josh Doan was fantastic. Of course, Noah Ostlund is going to be out with injury for the foreseeable future. The Sabres got Josh Norris back and installed him in that line. And whether it's been Norris or McLeod centering that line, they're great. Benson and Doan are awesome together, and they combined for the Sabres' second goal of the game, a power play goal, a sick pass from Zach Benson finds Ryan McLeod. McLeod's first goal of the playoffs, first playoff goal as a Sabre. Zach Benson's second assist of the game. Josh Doan's second point of the game. Buffalo's up 2-0 in the first period. Late in the first, the Sabres go to the box. I believe it was Dahlin who was penalized. Yep, Dahlin went to the box for interference, and a net front scramble results in a Nick Suzuki power play goal to put Montreal on the board with just 44 seconds remaining in the first period. Slafkovsky and Demidov with the assists on that one. Buffalo ahead 2-1 heading into the second. In the second period, one player for the Buffalo Sabres who has been absolutely remarkable in these playoffs so far, and in the regular season too, has been Mattias Samuelsson. He's been fantastic. Of course, he scored the goal that gave the Sabres the lead in Game 1 against Boston in the first round, and he had an assist on this goal. How about the night that Jordan Greenway had in Game 1 last night? And where did that come from? Jordan Greenway had to have had like 7 hits when it was all said and done. He was flattening guys as the night was going on. And Greenway entered the offensive zone, just kind of waited for someone to come up and challenge him. Nobody did, so he said, all right, well, I'm going to rip a wrist shot over the left shoulder of Jakub Dobeš. And that's exactly what he did to put the Sabres up 3-1. Greenway had an awesome game, his first playoff goal since he was playing with Minnesota in 2022. Sabres up 3-1. Buffalo finds themselves back on the power play midway through the period. And can you believe this? After a power play that only scored 1 goal in the entire 6-game series against Boston, the power play strikes for 2 in 1 game as Bo Byram scores a power play goal. Bo Byram's 4th goal of the playoffs for the Sabres. That ties him with 3 other defensemen for the all-time Sabres single playoffs franchise record, 4 goals. Phil Housley was on that list. Jason Woolley was on that list. And I think there was another one who I'm forgetting, possibly Brian Campbell. I almost want to say it was, and I think I'm wrong. I'm doing this totally from memory. I believe it was Phil Housley in 83. Jason Woolley in 1999, Brian Campbell in 2007, and Bo Byram this year. I think, but I could be wrong on that. So the Sabres are up 4-1. Kirby Dach did get a goal late for Montreal, but it was too late in the second period. Buffalo led 4-2 after 2. Third period, nobody scored. The Sabres hold on despite being outshot 28-16 in this game. The Sabres win Game 1 4-2. Benson, McLeod, and Doan each with 2 points. McLeod and Doan each had a goal and an assist. 2 assists for Zach Benson. Sabres win it 4-2 and jump out to a 1-0 series lead. Buffalo was absolutely killed at the faceoff dot. They were outshot in this game, but I would not say they were outplayed. I think Montreal really made a run in the third and in the latter half of the second, but Alex Lyon stood tall and the Sabres defense did as well. The first period was all Buffalo. It was all Buffalo in the first. So the Sabres, again, now that maybe they've got the power play going, maybe they can get something rolling on the man advantage. Game 2 of the series tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. That on TNT and streaming on HBO Max. Game 3 set for Sunday night at 7 p.m. on ESPN in Montreal. Game 4 will be next Tuesday at 7 o'clock on ESPN again at Montreal. Game 5, if necessary, would be a week from tonight, Thursday, May 14th at KeyBank Center in Buffalo. That game would be on TNT, True TV, and streaming live on HBO Max. Game 6, if necessary, would be graduation night for us seniors, Saturday, May 16th at Montreal. And if a Game 7 is needed, it would be Monday, May 18th in Buffalo on ESPN. But the Sabres are already out to a 1-0 series lead, and we'll see if they can possibly really put Montreal on the ropes in Game 2 tomorrow night. That's all for your Buffalo Sabres update. And for the last little bit of the show, coming up next, it's ranking time. The top 5 Fredonia sports moments of my tenure here at Fredonia, as well as the top 10 Buffalo sports moments. I'll bring those to you in just a moment, and then finish off the show with some thank yous and goodbyes. Thank you for tuning in to the final episode of Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. And welcome back to the grand finale of Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Before I jump into my countdowns, I did find the list of Sabres' single playoff year most goals by a defenseman. And I knew that Jason Woolley was on that list because Jason Woolley tweeted a picture of it. So I was kind of close. The 4 Sabres defensemen who have scored 4 playoff goals in a single playoff year. Mike Ramsey in 1983. I thought it was Phil Housley. It was actually Mike Ramsey. Jason Woolley in 1999. Alexei Zhitnik also in 1999. I thought Brian Campbell in 2007, but it was not Campbell. I think he had 3 in 2007. So both Woolley and Zhitnik in 99, Rammer in 83, and Bo Byram this year. And I say there's a very good chance that Bo Byram surpasses them all because he's played 7 total playoff games and has 4 goals. Woolley and Zhitnik each scored 4 on a team that went all the way to Game 6 of the Stanley Cup Finals. So, and although I will say that Ramsey probably would have had more, the Sabres were knocked out in round 2 by Boston in 83, and Ramsey had 4. I'd imagine Phil Housley probably had a lot that year too. But anyways, again, as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, for every semesterly finale that I've done in my 4 years here, I rank my top 10 favorite sports moments from the semester. And then at the end of the spring semester, I rank my top 10 favorite sports moments of the academic year. With this being the grandest of grand finales, I figured I would rank my top moments of my 4 years here at Fredonia. I couldn't decide whether to highlight Buffalo sports moments or Fredonia sports moments more, so I decided to highlight both. So I'll start with my top 5 Fredonia sports moments. And I have to double check. I've got to double check the years on some of these because I think I know them, but then I don't exactly 100% remember what years they were. So my number 5 Fredonia sports moment is from the fall of 2024 when Fredonia's men's basketball team began their season with an exhibition game at UB, at the University of Buffalo, obviously a Division I team. And I remember, I knew that the game was happening, so I'm like, all right, well, they're probably going to get killed. And I get a phone call from our former sports director and current sports editor at The Leader, Mitch Harusi. I get a phone call from Mitch. And I'm like, yo, what's up? And I'll never forget, he goes, dude, are you watching the Fredonia game right now? Are you watching the basketball game? I was like, no, why? Are they hanging it close? And I remember he goes, dude, they're up by 11. I was like, what? So I turned on the TV. They were up 18-7. I was like, what? So I turned on the TV to watch Fredonia add 7 more points to that to jump out to a 25-7 lead over the Division I UB Bulls. I was speechless. Now, Fredonia did end up losing this game 87-78, but the fact that they went on the road and gave a Division I, as a Division III team that had gone 7-18 in D3 the year before and would go 6-19 that year and only win 4 conference games in the SUNY, they gave UB a very legitimate scare, and it's one of the craziest things that I think I've ever watched. I was in shock that entire game. Moving on to my number 4 moment was another game from last year. And number 4 is the women's soccer home playoff game in 2024. This is from the same semester. So the women's soccer team overall went 12-8, 5-4 in conference play. They qualified not only for the SUNY tournament, finishing the year on a 4-game win streak in which they allowed just one total goal and got to host Buff State in the first round of the SUNY playoffs. I did not get an opportunity to go to this game, but I remember hearing that it was absolutely lethal. Fredonia allowed just 7 shots. They outshot Buff State 35-7 in this game. Katie Sellers put Fredonia up 1-0 late in the first half, and Gabby Irwin put the Blue Devils up by 2 early in the second. Fredonia held on and beat Buff State 2-0 in their first home playoff game in years. It was unbelievable. The Blue Devils did end up falling to one of the top seeds, New Paltz, on the road in their next game, but still an incredible, incredible home playoff game. My number 3 sports moment of Fredonia sports is, this is again one that is kind of a multitude of different. This is the various Cara Hall Memorial Invitationals for cross country that I've been able to see. So as I've said a few times on the show, I ran cross country in high school. I ran 6 seasons, 2 on modified, 4 on varsity for Allegheny Limestone. And I had a lot of very good teammates that year. Who are very successful, one of whom may possibly be in the Olympics for steeplechase in 2028. But the coolest thing was the number of teammates who I had who ran cross country for other colleges in Western New York. And those first couple of years, as Fredonia was hosting the Cara Hall Invitational, it was my sophomore year. They were hosting the Cara Hall Invitational. Or might have been my junior year, actually. I think it was my sophomore year. And several of my former teammates were coming back to run in this invitational. One of my best friends from the high school team was running for Alfred. Another one of my high school teammates was running for Brockport. And it was incredible to see all my old teammates come back. Another one of my high school teammates, she was running for Cobleskill. It was so awesome to see everybody we kind of hung out for a little bit that day, just relived some old cross-country memories from high school, and it was so neat to see them run again. And my junior year, I got to watch my cousin run for Fredonia. My cousin, Luke Peterson-Volz, a cross-country and track and field athlete here at Fredonia. I got to watch him run at Olean High School as he was growing up. He's 2 years younger than I am. And seeing him run at Fredonia has been absolutely incredible. I've gotten to see him run in 2 Cara Hall Invitationals, and it's been so cool to be able to watch him run. And I'll tell you what, he's better than I ever was. That's certainly the case, but it's been so much fun to watch him. Number 2 on my list is every Pink the Rink hockey game that I have been able to call. So Pink the Rink, of course, is the game every year that Fredonia hockey hosts where the Blue Devils actually wear pink uniforms with the name of somebody who's either currently battling cancer, is a cancer survivor, or has passed away from cancer. And at the end of the game, they have a ceremony where the families of the loved ones whose name is on the jersey, they go out and get the jersey from the player. It's absolutely incredible to watch. And I was actually fortunate enough to call 3 Pink the Rink games. I had to miss. If I remember correctly, I had to miss Pink the Rink my sophomore year because it was the weekend that we were in Vegas working at the Super Bowl. But I was able to call it those 3 other years, and it's just it's so cool to be able to watch this. And having several family members of mine who I've lost to cancer, several family members who are cancer survivors, it's just an incredible, incredible night. And if you've never gotten a chance to go, I highly recommend you go. And my number 1 Fredonia sports moment of my 4 years, I don't think it could possibly be anything but this moment. Alumni Weekend, Fall 2024. Fredonia hosting Plattsburgh and Potsdam in a weekend series, and a lot of the alums from the 1994 and 95 Fredonia teams that made crazy runs, 94 to the national semifinal, 95 to the national championship game. A lot of them were coming back to town. So I'll give you a little backstory, and I'll keep this brief. We were getting ready to call the game, and again, Mitch Harusi. Mitch goes, dude, look down there. Is that Charles Barkley? And I looked, at first I looked at Mitch, I'm like, you're an idiot. Why would Charles Barkley, of all people, be in Fredonia, of all places, in the middle of December? I'm like, that is not Charles Barkley. Like, you're insane. And then I look, and I kind of tilt my head a little bit, look a little bit closer, squint my eyes, and then my eyes bug out of my head, and I turn to Mitch and I go, dude, that's Charles Barkley. That's like actually Charles Barkley. It was one of the coolest things ever. My phone home screen background is still myself and Charles Barkley. He's like a foot taller than me at least. It was awesome. And Charles Barkley being an Auburn graduate and me being an Auburn football fan, I got to talk to him about Auburn football. And the first thing he says to me, I'm not even kidding, I say, I'm an Auburn football, big Auburn football fan, have been since I was a kid. And he looks at me and he goes, we need a quarterback. And he wasn't wrong. He was not wrong at all, and they still do. But yeah, those are my top 5 Fredonia sports moments, and I've got to go a little bit quick with these. My top 10 Buffalo sports moments. First, some honorable mentions. The Sabres breaking the playoff drought. Only reason this is not on the list is because the way the drought ended was so lame. It was a random Saturday afternoon where we were watching the game between the Red Wings and the Rangers won, so the Sabres got in. Kind of lame, but it got us into the playoffs. The Bills' playoff win over the Ravens in the 2024 season. Mark Andrews' dropped 2-point conversion and just absolute madness. I did snow angels on my porch, and this same night as my dad and I were celebrating on the back porch, my dog got really excited and saw that we were out there, so he ran full speed through the screen door and broke it. And we had to replace it. It was really funny. Another one is how Ticketmaster and I will say beverages don't mix well. So the season opener of the 2023-2024 season, I watched with a few buddies of mine in Alumni Hall, and we watched the game. The Sabres lost badly to the Rangers. And after a few beverages, we open up Ticketmaster. We're like, let's go to the game next Thursday. Let's go see the Sabres. And we all bought Sabres tickets, and it was awesome even though they lost. So anyways, my top 10 Buffalo sports moments. Number 10, the 2024 National Lacrosse League playoffs, the opening round. Josh Burns' overtime playoff winner against the Georgia Swarm. I was at this game with my sister Katie. That was like the most nerve-wracking lacrosse game I've ever seen. It was winner-take-home, winner-take-all, single elimination game. And they went back and forth for like 6 minutes before Josh Byrne finally buried the winner. Bandits went on to win the championship that year. We'll talk more about that later. Number 9, the Sabres. My freshman year, January of 2023, the Sabres honored Ryan Miller, the goalie I grew up watching, by retiring his number 30. The game against the New York Islanders went to overtime, and right off the faceoff, a Rasmus Dahlin stretch pass found Dylan Cousins on a breakaway, and he buried the overtime winner. It was incredible. I thought they were going to the playoffs that year. They missed by 1 point. Number 8, speaking of 2023, this is the fall of 23, the Week 4 Bills versus Dolphins game in Orchard Park. My good friend Parker Gurnett, former sports director here at FRS, Parker and I went to the game. Stephon Diggs caught 3 touchdown passes from Josh Allen. The Bills won 48-20, and we got back here, and we both jumped through a table off the top of Parker's Chevy Equinox. Those things are a lot taller than they look. That was I ended up jumping feet first. Not a good idea. Number 7, January of 2024. It was Martin Luther King Day, and my family and I all had tickets to a Sabres afternoon game against the San Jose Sharks. That weekend, a massive snowstorm came through Buffalo, and only, I think it was Monday morning, was when the travel ban was lifted in Erie County. The Bills had a wild card playoff game at home against the Steelers that was slated for Sunday. They moved it back to Monday. So Monday at noon was the Sabres game. We drove up to the game, watched the Sabres play, and the second the game ended, the Sabres did win. The second the game ended, we hightailed it home for the Bills game that was starting at 5 o'clock. Just barely made it home in time for the game, and the Bills beat the Steelers. It was incredible. What a day that was. Number 6, speaking of the Bills, this season, of course, was the last in their stadium in Orchard Park, and I had the fortune of being at the last ever home game. Chloe and I went. It was absolutely phenomenal. It was beautiful. I'm not going to lie. I cried. Number 5, the Bandits three-peat in 2025, the championship game. I was not there because my cousin was getting married on the same day. So I was not able to be at the game. I was at my cousin's wedding, but we were at the wedding reception, and I was totally watching the game on my phone. I was actually providing my uncle, yes, the father of the bride, with score updates on the Bandits game, and they held on against the Saskatchewan Rush to win their 3rd straight championship. Number 4, the Bandits championship in 2023. Again, my freshman year. Bandits were fresh off a devastating championship loss to Colorado the year before. I was home watching this, and the Bandits, in an absolute blowout, beat the Colorado Mammoth 13-4 in a winner-take-all Game 3 to capture their 5th title in franchise history in their first in 15 years. I remember dropping to my knees in my kitchen, putting on my cowboy hat, and playing Save a Horse, Ride a Cowboy for some reason. I don't remember why. Game number 3, a very recent one. The Sabres' first playoff win in 15 years. The Sabres beating Boston, coming back to beat Boston in Game 1 of their first-round series. They trailed 2-0 before 2 Tage Thompson goals tied it up. A Matthias Samuelsson goal gave him the lead, and an Alex Tuch empty net goal sealed the win. First Sabres playoff win since I was in first grade. Number 2, the Bandits' second of the 3-peat championships. It was just, again, incredible. And this was a game that I was driving up, and it was the day of graduation. I whipped open my laptop as soon as I parked in Buffalo, missed Chloe graduating by about 30 seconds, rewound to watch her and all my other friends, went into the game. Bandits won the championship. That's the only championship game I was there for. And number 1, again, taking it back to my freshman year. The start of January 2023 was rough for all of Buffalo and myself. On January 2nd, a Monday night game in Cincinnati, Bills safety Damar Hamlin, of course, collapsed due to a cardiac event. He was taken to the hospital, and we weren't sure if he was going to survive. The very next day, I actually endured a breakup. My relationship of a year and a half ended. Rough week for me, I know. And the opening kickoff of the Bills game against the Patriots, Nyheim Hines runs the opening kickoff back for a touchdown, and it was the first time I felt like I could actually breathe since everything had happened after a rough week. So that's my top 10 countdown. Got to go a little bit quick here, but I do have one last commercial break to take before capping it off with a farewell. Thanks for tuning in to the finale of Big Blue Sports here on WCVF 88.9, the campus and community voice of Fredonia. Back in a few. And welcome back to the last couple of minutes, and I really do mean couple of minutes. I've got about a minute and a half here. Wow. This is the goodbye that I have dreaded since I started this show. I began Big Blue Sports as a freshman who came in, saw the Fredonia radio station, and was so excited to jump in. I started my show in October, and it has been an unbelievable experience since then. I have way too many people to thank. I will run out of time if I try to thank all of them. But some specific people do deserve shout-outs. My family, of course, above possibly anybody else. my parents, who are both Fredonia grads, who have taken time out of their schedule to listen to this show every single week. My sisters, who have supported me through all of this. My girlfriend, Chloe, who is a former station manager here and has been a fiercely loyal supporter of mine. All of my friends here on campus, who I'm going to miss so much and am so eternally grateful for. My grandparents, who tune into the show every week. Grandma Kathy and Papa, as well as G-Ma and G-Pa. And G-Ma no longer with us. We lost G-Ma in January. I know she's looking down and tuning into the show every week. And she's doing so alongside the one who started my Fredonia legacy, my great-grandmother, my Gigi, who graduated from Fredonia 90 years ago and started this Fredonia legacy. I owe so much of what I have to this show and these people and this radio station. And as heartbroken as I am that it's coming to an end, I'm so excited for everything that's going to come next. Everybody who's taking over the station is going to do such a great job. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you all do. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart for listening to this show for the last 4 years, whether it's been live or on YouTube. I'm eternally grateful. Without you all, none of this would have ever been possible. And I will miss you all. I love you all. And for one final time on Big Blue Sports, this is Matt Volz signing off.